Hello and welcome viewers. This is a Talk to Addis weekly program of Addis Media Network, and I'm your host, Asrat Addiso. Our today's guest is Solomon ገብረስላሴ, an economist with lots of experience in the fields of macroeconomy, financial and monetary policies, and also a consultant in the sustainable development areas. Welcome, Solomon.
Well, stay.
I would like to thank you on behalf of Addis Media Network for being available to this interview.
Thank you very much.
May I please ask you about your profile, your experiences? Would you please tell us?
My full name is Solomon ገብረስላሴ Malka. I started a career as economics lecturer at Addis Ababa University. Then I served as a researcher, team leader, and policy advisor at National Bank of Ethiopia. My most recent experience is as a development consultant at different NGOs, international non-governmental organizations, including United Nations Development Program, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. In these NGOs, I served as a consultant for harnessing data revolution for sustainable development goal, supported the Second African Regional Integration Index, computation of the Second African Regional Integration Index, and recently I have supported the design and setup of Innovative Finance Lab that's initiated by the United Nations Development Program and National Bank of Ethiopia.
Whatever the case is, the preferable aspect to deal with is, I think, the macroeconomic reform aspect, because other countries came through such reforms. Am I sure?
Exactly. Yeah, it's inevitable actually. Going to the market is inevitable. When? The important issue is, and the wise issue is, when and how. That's the important issue. It's inevitable to go to the global market. It's inevitable to go to the market. It's inevitable to allocate resources through what you call invisible hands. Invisible hand, yeah.
Yeah, because globalization has a lot to do with our economy, because we are part and parcel of the global economy.
It's not bad also. It's good. As I said earlier, it has a lot of benefits. But the problem is we are not ready for that. We have been closed for a long time. We have been through, for instance, if you consider the financial sector, we are still struggling with the institutional system. The banks are dominant system. There are certain initiatives here and there on establishment of capital markets. There are some sort of initiative, private initiative to establish mutual funds. There are some sort of initiative by the are foreigners to bring some venture capitals or angel funds. But the whole economy is dependent on the banking sector. Even the government is dependent on the banking sector. Substantial finance comes from the banking sector.
What has Treasury to do with this? For instance, I hear
Treasury bill? You mean Treasury bill? Or
yeah.
What? Treasury bill?
Yeah.
Treasury bill is a sort of document that is issued by the government to finance its deficit. The deficit you have, as any government, deficit is not a bad thing actually. You have a deficit.
I see.
Budget deficit, I mean. When you have a budget deficit, either you have to issue a bond or you have to borrow internally or externally. Or, the last resort, you have to print money, which is inflationary. Yeah, yes, actually. We have been doing it a lot of time, but it is definitely inflationary, yeah. The last resort, we say it as the last resort, because it is inflationary. Yeah, it brings bad things to the economy, yeah.
Great. My other question is, does this Ethiopian macroeconomic reform has some effects on the trade balance? You mentioned some points, I remember.
You raise a critical question. Yeah. Most of us will as an economist or a practitioner or a financial professional, Our focus is on trade balance, but trade balance is not. That's important. Trade balance is important. Terms of trade. Our terms of trade should be like nobody had that if import somehow balanced trade between imports and exports, but that's not a good thing. First of all, trade balance is, as its name implies, balance of commodities. There are other factors when it comes to current account, when it comes to capital account, when it comes to balance of payments. So, as I mentioned earlier, Ethiopia has a huge gap between its imports and exports. It needs a structural,
holistic approach.
A holistic reform in our consumption. It needs a holistic change and integrated actually change in our consumption pattern, our production pattern, and our policy, especially. We have to have, we should think hard in import substitution, for instance.
Yeah, recently I started to think this tourism aspect because Ethiopian Prime Minister was awarded kind of prize and has been named tourism champion for the next 3 years because of the initiatives that he has been dealing with.
Yeah.
That was a kind of transformative plan by IGAD, and IGAD, as you know, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development of this, the Horn countries, the Horn of Africa countries. So still the government is dealing in such aspects. Yeah, and you mentioned the reform can be and can only be realized depending on so many aspects.
We have to think like in a manner that's integrated and, as you said, comprehensively and inclusively as well. I've seen a good thing from this 10-year perspective plan. The 10-year perspective plan considers intellectuals and these NGOs. What you lack in our development landscape is we don't have community-based development. The role of intellectuals is very, very limited. The role of civil organizations is very limited. And we lack institutions, as I said earlier. We need a sort of quality data. In this aspect, we have to think hard of institutional reforms, not only sectoral reforms. We shouldn't wait until somebody else come and tell us to do this and do that. For instance, IMFs are prescribing to us that we have to give the government. The government has to give an autonomy or independence to the national bank. It will be promulgated soon. In the coming maybe 6, 7 months. This is a prescription. Instead of that, it was possible to give an autonomy for national bank. I propose the same to the Central Statistics Authority. Currently, Central Statistics Authority is under the National Planning Commission. But when you see this monitoring and evaluation framework of the 10-year perspective plan, though it's not clear, Central Statistics should be governed by like House of Representatives, even at least the Prime Minister, at least. Central Statistics is a very, very critical factor for policy, to formulate science-based strategies and policies, plans. Statistics is very important. So we have to think hard on those issues. Even to start, we can think of a national bank and central statistics. Institutional reform are important. So is there a chance to deliver this reform, especially the government? It needs, as I said, it needs to think hard, especially in the institutional part. Inclusiveness is important, openness is important, transparency is important, accountability is important. There was a good initiative after this reform. The Prime Minister had been conducting this quarterly evaluation of cabinet members. That was an excellent initiative, but I don't know whether it's happening now or not. Monitoring, follow-up, monitoring and evaluation are important aspects of development. They are not standalone things. For that, we need quality, timely, and frequent data we need. We have to think of hard for this institutional reform. Sectoral reform is a must. Without sectoral reforms, you will not have macroeconomic reform, or you will not have a structural reform, or you will not have a structural transformation. By sectoral reform, I mean, when to think of agriculture, we have to transform agriculture. Agriculture is still a dominant sector in our country, especially when you think of employment. Agricultural is the largest employer of the country still. Some 65 to 70% of the population is still employed in agriculture. You can think of export revenue. Agriculture is still the sector that contributes almost 70, 75 or 80% of that generates our export revenue. So we can think of agricultural transformation or sectoral reforms in agriculture by adding values, by commercializing agriculture, by facilitating. There are certain measures that can be appreciated regarding this. Even in the Forex directive, there are certain measures that facilitate imports of farm inputs, including tractors, other things. Another important issue is we have to think of hard about the private sector. Without the private sector, there is no market. Without market, there is no development, because we are following another model. Market-led, private sector will be an engine for growth, and market will be the facilitator of exchange, and government will be a regulator. So in this framework, we have to think hard. How are you going to enable the private sector has to thrive, not survive, because when the private sector thrives, the whole economy will boost. And we have to think of creating synergies among the private sectors. To all this, transparency is important. Governance is an important issue. The civil service is an important issue. Public procurement is an important issue. There are a lot of things. So we have to think.
Indispensable factors.
Yeah, you can call them indispensable factors. So we can think of how to integrate, innovate, and collaborate as well. I have to collaborate.
In a nutshell, what's your personal opinion as a professional, as an economist, about this economic reform? I can deduct your opinion from whatever explanation that you have had already, but let you say it in your own words. What is your view?
Yeah, to be fair, let's quickly look at two things. Is the reform undertaken at the right time? Why the reform is taken? Because we have been, the way we come to the past 2 decades will not going to lead us any further. So it's like something understandable by the government side to think of such reforms. Sometimes we have to be fair. We need to be fair. Sometimes you'll be in a dilemma. You know dilemma? Yeah. So controversy. You see, choosing this one and that one will be difficult. As I have seen from my profile, I was a researcher and a policy advisor at the National Bank of Ethiopia. My preferred stance was like managed floating exchange or a sort of pegged floating exchange. But the problem is we have been managing the exchange rates for a period of 10, 15 years, more than that, or even 20 years during the PRDF regime, I mean. That doesn't work anymore. And I think the government has its own view regarding the reform. The benefit of this reform, basically, the benefit of this reform is, in terms of economy, is the trade and investment, most of the benefits. Investment, from the development partners, maybe, or from private sectors, from public or private sectors, yeah? More or less, we'll get the investment from the public sector. I mean international, I'm talking about international public, international private. More or less, we'll get the international public part. That's sort of concession. We'll get a concessional loan if we are good enough to design programs that are aligned with international initiatives such as Sustainable Development Goal, such as climate initiative, others. There are so many initiatives in this 21st century. The world is full of initiatives, full of programs. So if you align our programs, projects towards those initiatives, believe me, we get a lot of money, or if you call it investment, from the public source. But the most important part of investment comes from the private sector, especially when you think of the private sector, the mentality of the investors, and if you can call them capitalists or entrepreneurs. They need certain conditions to invest in your country. Those conditions are not in place in Ethiopia. That's my argument, first argument. The second argument is that we don't have the market itself. When you come to the financial market, when you consider the financial market, we don't have a financial market. If you wish, we will have time for this. What does financial market mean? Why? We don't have a market, really. I'm sorry to say that. We don't have a market, financial market. So without a market, how are you going to allocate foreign exchange? It's difficult to allocate a bread, let alone foreign exchange. So this is my second argument. The third one is trend matters. Trend matters always. There is no black slate. We are accustomed to a trend of other types of development or state-led model from the economic-wide perspective. From the forex perspective, we have been using a managed floating rate or pegged floating. We have been operationalizing this through the last 2 decades. Who was operationalizing that? National Bank, Ministry of Finance, and commercial banks, and other actors. So it takes time to adjust this. Even that was feasible. Market's approach was feasible. And last but not least, going to market is inevitable. Going to market is inevitable. But the critical question is when and how. Thank you very much.
Well, viewers, this is all for today. See you on another program, and stay with the other programs of Addis Media Network. Thank you so much.